It all began with a letter, a chilling message from a killer who wanted everyone to know his name, the Zodiac. He wasn't just confessing to murder, he was promising more, holding Northern California hostage in the late 1960s. While the world preached peace and love, a dark shadow crept over the Bay Area, cast by a man who killed for sport and spectacle. The Zodiac didn't just take lives, he took the public stage, turning his crimes into a terrifying performance. His motive? He claimed his victims would be his slaves in the afterlife. A bizarre, otherworldly claim that left detectives speechless. The story started quietly, with a letter arriving at 3 major newspapers on August 1, 1969. The author took credit for 2 recent shootings, providing details only the killer could know, a direct challenge to authorities. Most killers hide. The Zodiac craved fame, using letters to control the narrative and demand attention. He signed his letters with a cross-circle symbol, a logo that would soon haunt the nightmares of a generation. The police weren't just hunting a man, they were battling an idea, a phantom who seemed everywhere and nowhere at once. The Zodiac understood the power of the media, using newspapers as his megaphone to broadcast threats and twisted philosophy. The Bay Area became his audience, and he was the star of his own horrifying show. The name Zodiac became a brand, catchy, mysterious, and deeply unsettling. With ink and paper, he created a myth and a legend. The game had begun, and the world could only wonder what would come next. Fear spread quickly, first a whisper, then a headline, then a reason to lock your doors at night. In Northern California, that fear had a name, the Zodiac. His attacks were random, young couples in lovers' lanes, a lone cab driver, no pattern, no way to know who might be next. Anyone could be a target. The comfort of everyday life evaporated. The attacks were brutal, sudden, and theatrical. Once he even wore a hooded executioner's costume. This was more than murder, it was psychological terror. He wanted people to fear the dark, to suspect every stranger. The Bay Area, once free-spirited, felt like a community under siege. The Zodiac became a ghost story come to life, a real boogeyman. Police scrambled, but the killer was always a step ahead, leaving only cryptic clues and dread. The entire region held its breath, waiting for the next strike. The Zodiac reveled in the panic, taunting the press with letters about the fear he caused. He fed off the anxiety, using it to fuel his ego. The fear wasn't a byproduct, it was the point. He was conducting a grand experiment in terror, and the Bay Area was his unwilling laboratory. The question on everyone's mind, where would he strike next? The city waited, trapped in his shadow. The Zodiac's deadliest weapon wasn't always a gun or knife, it was his pen. His letters kept the police and public on edge, long after the crimes faded. He sent them everywhere, newspapers, lawyers, police. Each letter was a calculated move, provoking, confusing, terrifying. He included details only the killer would know, proving his authenticity. The letters were messy, erratic. Was it a disturbed mind or a clever act? He threatened rampages if his letters weren't published, forcing the media to play along. The police couldn't respond, all they could do was wait for the next envelope. The Zodiac controlled the flow of information, the pace of fear. He was the puppet master, everyone else, his puppets. With every letter he mocked their inability to stop him. His pen was mightier than any badge. The Zodiac wanted more than attention. He wanted to play games. He sent complex ciphers to newspapers, daring authorities to solve them. The first, a 408-symbol cryptogram, was split among 3 papers, with a threat publish or more, would die. The message promised his identity, but when solved by a schoolteacher and his wife, it revealed only ramblings about killing for fun and collecting slaves for the afterlife. More ciphers followed, each more complex. The infamous Z340 cipher stumped experts for decades, finally cracked in 2020. Again, no name, just more taunts. The ciphers proved his intelligence and distracted police, keeping them busy while he planned his next move. They were a smokescreen, a time-consuming game. While experts hunched over puzzles, the real threat remained at large. The Zodiac was a game master, always playing for keeps. His ciphers became legendary, fueling the myth. The puzzles were never about confession, they were about control. Each solved cipher brought only more questions. The Zodiac's true identity stayed hidden behind the code. The game was always rigged in his favor. The police faced a new kind of killer, one who used the media as a weapon. The investigation spanned multiple jurisdictions, each with its own files and detectives. Coordination was a nightmare. Communication between departments was slow and fragmented. Detectives worked tirelessly, interviewing thousands, analyzing handwriting, and building psychological profiles. The profile suggested an intelligent, socially awkward local seeking control and superiority, but a profile isn't a name or a face, just a shadow. The letters and ciphers were both a curse and a potential blessing, offering clues but also draining resources. Every letter was scrutinized for fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting. Police tried to engage the Zodiac through the press, hoping he'd slip up, but he was careful, elusive, and made no mistakes. Leads fizzled, survivor descriptions conflicted, and technology lagged behind. The police did everything by the book, but the book hadn't been written for a killer like the Zodiac. They were always one step behind, chasing a ghost. The hunt for the Zodiac was one of the most exhaustive and frustrating in American history. Over 2,500 suspects were investigated, every tip followed, every possible lead checked. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming, the real killer hid in plain sight. Forensic science was limited, no DNA analysis, only blood typing and fingerprints. The Zodiac left few clues, and those he did, letters, shell casings, scraps of victims' clothing, never led to a breakthrough. The most famous suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, fit many criteria but was never definitively linked. His handwriting didn't match, and a palm print wasn't his. Allen died in 1992, taking any secrets with him. The case cycled between hope and disappointment, hot and cold. After a final letter in 1974, the Zodiac went silent. Did he die, go to prison, or simply disappear? Detectives retired, new ones took over, but the mystery endured. The killer vanished, leaving only questions. The frustration grew with every dead end. The Zodiac became a legend, his identity lost to time. Was the Zodiac ever caught? No. Despite one of California's largest manhunts, he was never identified or brought to justice. The case files remain open, the killer a ghost haunting police departments to this day. The lack of resolution is chilling, fueling endless theories and armies of amateur sleuths. Books, documentaries, and new suspects emerge, but none are proven. Modern technology brought hope, a partial DNA profile from letter stamps. In 2021, a group claimed to have identified the Zodiac, but law enforcement hasn't confirmed it. The question of his identity lingers. Was it Allen, someone else, or a name we'll never know? The Zodiac may have achieved his goal, a perfect, unsolvable mystery. He's become a legend, a modern Jack the Ripper. The questions he left behind may never be answered. The Zodiac's trail is cold, but his story endures. He's inspired books, movies, and TV, becoming a symbol of the unknown killer who outsmarts the police. The case changed law enforcement, highlighting the need for better cooperation and communication. The Zodiac's manipulation of the media became a blueprint for future criminals. For police, it was a brutal lesson in the challenges of serial crime. For the victims' families, the pain is real and lasting, a hole that can never be filled. Decades later, the files remain open, amateur detectives keep searching, and DNA evidence waits for a match. The Zodiac is a ghost ship, sighted, never reached. Sometimes the bad guy gets away. Sometimes the story has no ending. The shadow he cast over Northern California has never fully lifted. The mystery endures, haunting all who seek answers. The Zodiac's legacy is the questions he left behind. The Zodiac story is a journey into darkness, a killer who turned murder into a public spectacle and vanished. His crimes were a performance, and we, the public, were his audience. The curtain fell, but the man behind the mask was never revealed. We remain captivated by the ciphers, the audacity, and the primal fear of the unknown. The Zodiac represents the failure of the system, the idea that some mysteries are too deep to solve. In a world of answers, he stands as a monument to the unknown. Sometimes evil slips through our fingers and disappears. The questions about his identity and motives will echo for generations. The search for answers continues, not just for the Zodiac, but for all unsolved mysteries. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned and stay safe as we explore the shadows that still linger in our world.